developers drinking good Arab tea. My name is Rami, your host for this episode.
And I'm the Miss Mar.
And I'm Osama.
Wow, it's three Habibis again.
Yes.
What are the chances?
I just,
Who
I just
would
did.
have thought?
I just did the equivalent of a podcast hiccup, in which I double click on the mute button. So
Oh,
it became,
That's what happened.
yeah, I'm
That's
I am Z.
You are Mesmer.
I'm Z.
Mesmer.
Z in the house.
Listen, you want to try that again?
with the double muting or without?
No, without double muting. So you can just say who you are, so people know who you are.
I am Fawzi Mesmar.
Wow.
Your co-host for this
did
evening.
you say that you're posing as more? That's what I heard.
I am posing as more.
Posing as more.
How could you be
One
more
of my
than Fawzi? That's impossible.
Honestly, posing as more is still one of my favorite people in animation.
What was that thing again? Was it
It was
an
one of
audio
those automated transcript,
Yeah.
Because for accessibility, I started looking into transcription, and everybody's like, "Oh yeah, if you want to transcribe stuff, just lots of these really good automated services." And the first Arab word it comes across, which is "Salam alaikum," is it like salsa and something? And I'm like, okay, no, this isn't gonna work.
And then it did all kinds of things to our names. I was posing as more, and
Posing as more.
They got Rami right.
Rami was something funny though. His first name was right, but then his last name was something funny. I don't remember what it was.
Yeah, I probably just like Ismail.
Yeah.
Like is a man.
I have one of those Google Nests at home, and whenever I speak to it, asking for the most simple of tasks, I feel a bit at ease with the idea that AI is gonna destroy humanity. I'd be like, no, we're still a long way from that, because I've been asking Google for the weather for the past 25 minutes, and it's told me every city in the world except for Stockholm.
I'm sorry, I can't help you with that.
It doesn't mean it won't take over the world. It might even do a better job than we're doing. Just saying.
It might take over the world through sheer incompetence, which apparently totally works given, the political climate of the planet at the moment.
Even what we're doing.
I don't know. My Google normally gets things pretty right, except for when I want to turn off all the lights at the end of the day. If I just tell it to turn off all the lights, it'll tell me that I can't do it. But then if I use the routine that I created for good night, it just does it.
Wow. Interesting.
No idea what the difference is. No. I mean, AI has been a big topic the last few weeks, so that's been a thing.
What do you guys think of the AI art stuff?
Yeah, I have a lot of opinions.
How about Osama? How about you drop some first?
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
We can take cover behind you if if you say anything.
The first thing is it's inevitable. It's going to happen. At this point, we have to, understand that it's a tech that exists. There are uses for it, and it's going to happen. So, as with all new tech, it's scary at first and requires regulation. That's really what the crux of it is for me, is that right now it's scary because there are no regulations, there are no rules. They're using the algorithm to scan images that they have no copyright rights to because there's no law that makes that forces them to do so. And we're seeing the results of that, where people's styles are being picked up on. In a similar way that you can't copyright game design, there could be an argument that you can't copyright art style. There's going to be a lot of legislature that has to come to protect people or to protect the AIs and say, no, you're allowed to do this, and then we have to pivot in consequence. I personally like it as a tool. It gives designers and tech people who don't have art skills, a way to just quickly express what they mean visually. I don't mean it as an end result, but just as this is what I'm thinking. This is in my head. I'm going to throw a couple of words out there and a bunch of pictures are generated, and I'm going to point at one of them and tell you it's closer to this one than the others, right? For production, I think that's very valuable. And if you use it that way, I don't really see any problem with it, because you're not using it as final art, and there's no legal argument over whether the parts that you picked up on are belong to someone else, because we do that all the time when we're making games anyway, we pick up references. That's what references are, right? This is just using a mishmash of references instead of specific references. It's not a problem. The issue is, can you commercialize that? Can you take bits and pieces from other artists' work, put it through a blender, and say it's mine now? And that's something that we have to figure out legally.
I think I'm a little stricter on the line than you are there, Osama. Like I see what you're saying, and I think I mostly agree. I think for me the distinction comes with the creation of the tools themselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you reference something, when you go and reference art, you reference art, and then an artist takes that art and turns it into something else,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's a paid job
Mm-hmm.
to do that. Right now, what you're creating is you're creating these tools that are often paid or supported otherwise, that are building tremendous community like strength and like popularity, and they're doing it on the work of people who did not give permission to do that.
Exactly, that's the problem,
right? That's for me the problem. I don't care what the intent of the art is that is being generated. For me, that is a secondary problem that is equally big. For me, the problem is that these are tools that are being created, and the value of the tool is in the database of art, right? The AI itself is not of value. It's not useful to anybody. It's only useful to anybody when it has data, when it has learning sets.
Mm-hmm.
And if those learning sets are data that aren't licensed or aren't allowed for use by the creators of those sets, I think that's where my first line is drawn. Like that just shouldn't be possible. And I know it is possible because, like you said, regulation is always late. But for me, how people use it is the second big question. I think you and I are very aligned on that. It's like, if it's used for non-commercial purposes, internal purposes, whatever, yeah, sure, whatever. If it's used for commercial purposes or it's used to resell, that is obviously a problem. And then there's sort of like the gray area of like, okay, well, people's jobs, it used to be people's jobs to do this, and now it's getting outsourced to an AI.
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, the problem becomes when the peoples whose jobs are going to be outsourced to AI are the same people who are getting exploited and being added to that learning set without their permission. And that's where it gets a little iffy, right?
I get that. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Fawzi.
No. But I was gonna jump in, but you can go in first, Osama, if you want the Rami's point.
Yeah, actually, the point that Rami made that is intriguing to me is that you're making a distinction between using the images for the learning and using the images to generate other images. Because I don't know if there's actually a distinction in that, but that is a fascinating question. Can AI algorithms use any image to learn? And can they source any of those images to create new art? Are those two separate concepts? And do I have a different stance on both? I haven't given that enough thought. We're aligned on the second part, but the first part of okay, imagine a world where you have two different categories of the AI art generator. The one that only sources public domain or with permission art, and that becomes okay. In terms of sourcing it for the art itself, not for the learning part. If there's if there's a distinction between those two, and the second is the one that you can use for internal and concept that actually doesn't. You cannot use it for commercial use because it sources everything. Is that a distinction that you see?
I mean, I think the separation I make is not necessarily in the data sets. It's in the algorithm versus the data set.
I see.
Right? The algorithm is a program. It basically is a deep learning type of algorithm, which means it's relatively unpredictable to us.
Mm-hmm.
It looks for patterns in information, and it uses those patterns to create decisions. Right? And deep learning is fascinating. It's been used for all sorts of super interesting things. It's a little unpredictable, but it's a fascinating sort of like programming tool. That said, any deep learning program is completely without value without learning sets. So my distinction is the program versus the learning set. And if the program without the learning set has no value, and the program with the learning set has value, then the value is being added by the learning set, right? And if that learning set then contains things that do not have permission to be in there, then there is value generation by people who there's value generation with the use of works of people who have not consented to that. And that is per definition a problem, right?
Absolutely.
Because the value is being generated by other people's work, and that's effectively, as far as I understand, in every possible way that will be theft. So that's where my issue is not the distinction between like what, because if you use only public domain information or public domain data sets, then I'm already okay.
Yeah, you're right.
Right? Like fair. Like, I mean, that information, that data was created for public domain for all purposes. And if there is no further license limiting their use for that kind of stuff, sure. But we saw last week, I don't know if it was last week, we saw that case of the kid who was releasing all those NFT games, and they were just Pico 8 games that were made by developers. And they had not given permission to this kid to turn them into NFTs. And he then argued that the games were all under public domain. What he didn't realize is that not all of the assets in the game are under public domain. So you get this weird situation where I think a lot of people are taking lots of shortcuts to just go like, okay, well, this is public domain. If Google says it's public domain, okay, it's public domain, but nobody's actually checking the licenses, right? Nobody's actually checking whether that's true, because that will be way too much work. So there's a lot of value generation through taking unethical shortcuts, a lot of value generations through using people's hard work to feed these things without their permission. And in the end, what you get is these tools that are getting popular, that are gonna get investment, that are gonna be subscription services that you pay for, that are gonna be used to generate brand awareness or brand value, and all of those things are being done with those shortcuts because there is no regulation. It doesn't have to be. I've seen artists start to post erotic art or other types of art that would ban their art pages from those data sets.
Clever.
Just to stay out of those data sets.
It's sad that they have to do that.
Yeah.
It's preposterous, but like, our technology is good enough to filter that sort of stuff out. So when a set comes across that kind of, when an algorithm comes across that sort of stuff, it'll just get flagged as not safe for work, and then it'll just get like booted out of the algorithm. That's not how it should be. People shouldn't be drawing like haram stuff.
No, they should be.
They shouldn't be drawing haram stuff to not get their work stolen, right?
It should be you make a very compelling argument that nobody's going to check the licenses, like the public domain and Creative Commons licenses. So at this point, the way I'm seeing it is that it should only be opt-in. And if you only have opt-in, you're not going to have a data set. Well, especially initially, you're not going to have a data set large enough to get any work of value. So it's a problem.
Exactly,
it's a problem.
Yeah. The value is being generated through these shortcuts.
Yeah. In my point of view, it might be a little bit like the way I'm thinking about these things is like maybe a little bit outside of the legalities or the use cases of it. Like for me, like looking at the high level at this technology, I feel that this AI technology is good and it's going to improve, but I am convinced that I can't see the software comes to parallel or beat human creativity. And I just think that these algorithms are going to only be as good as the algorithm is written and the source material that that is fed into them. And you can already see that what are they, DALL-E and Midjourney? You can almost already tell if an AI generated thing is a DALL-E or a Midjourney.
Yeah, you can.
It seems like because of the difference in the set that's been fed to this software, as unpredictable as they are, they almost also become predictable because ultimately it's a software that is following a set of notions that, a set of steps. As complex as those steps is, they're still following rules that we set out for them. And then, they spit out the output. there's also the queries that we put in that don't follow steps generally, and you can argue that adds to the creative process. But ultimately, I believe that our creativity as human is because of our inefficient thinking. Is because we don't follow the steps. We don't follow a particular predictable algorithm when it comes to creativity and creation. We, in fact, constantly break rules when it comes to our creativity, and that's why human creativity is unbound. Nothing is impossible. The set of code can't create that level of, at the risk of using the word, randomness in terms of how we connect between things and end up creating it.
I mean, the main thing is what deep learning does. It's pattern recognition, right? So it can only create based on existing patterns that are in existing art. Like that. That's how.
Yep.
That's how the algorithm works. It can only create patterns based on patterns, and those patterns can be incredibly complex, but they're still patterns. And you could argue that humans kind of work the same way, but humans are not limited to a single data set, right?
Yeah.
Like you can change how you draw based on music.
Yeah.
Right. You can change how you interpret a piece of music based on what you're looking at. You can change the thing that you're working on because you saw a beautiful cloud.
Yeah, but I would also.
There was wind chill.
But I think what I would also add to that, Ram, is that you can also change a piece of music or a piece of art based on making a mistake. So you can hit the wrong note, and then all of a sudden that became its own thing. It's the same way that you have a lot of game designers that just make something. A bug creates a very interesting feature, and that becomes a game.
Right.
Or you interpret a data set based on how you feel. So it'll be the same data set, it's the same information, but if you're upset, then you interpret it in a very different way than you would if you were happy. And I believe that's something that is almost impossible to replicate in a machine that is just detecting patterns.
It is, until you have works that have been created in each of those emotional states, and then it can create those kind of patterns because those patterns are in the data set, right? It doesn't know that what it's creating is from an upset point of view because it just doesn't know. That's not how it works. It's just it's finding patterns, matching patterns to queries, and then executing on those patterns. So you can absolutely get an upset interpretation of something.
Theoretical.
It just doesn't know. It doesn't know that it is that.
Yeah, theoretically, that's assuming let's say it's poetry. That's assuming that there is a poem that's been written about every single feeling someone could have about something. That feeling when you open a fridge and want a Coke, but you don't find one. And then somebody wrote a poem about that. So, if you get that specific and you can actually generate art, you're basically saying having a full library of human art to emotion. then yes. But I don't think we have that or ever will.
We kind of do. I mean, it's not clean, but we have tags in all the search engines. We have comments that I'm sure the algorithm scrapes all of that data and informs the data set by it. So we don't have it in a clean way, in a structured way, but it's there. There's no piece of art or image on the internet that doesn't have the capacity or the ability to have tags, right? Or some kind of text associated with it. And I'm sure that's how it's collecting all that data anyway. I'm so happy. I love this. I want this on the t-shirt. These are all comments that, people make.
and that's the reason I use the Coke example, because it's a bit more specific than I am disappointed.
Yeah, that's true.
You know what I mean? And that it goes into the granularity. I could obviously come up with a lot of artwork under the tag beautiful. But that, as you quickly come to realize, is not enough to classify a lot of art.
I mean, do you remember a while ago there was a bit of a controversy about one of the machine learning, and I don't remember what it was, but one of the machine learning programs, might have been DALL-E, might have been Midjourney, might have been another one. Basically, what they did is they ran into a problem where there was a very high lack of diversity in the generated images.
Yeah.
And one of the ways the creators tried to solve for it was they would randomly add a race to the query.
Yeah.
So you would type a query, and it would just in the background add the word like black or Arab or Chinese to the query, so that you would get more diverse results. And it doesn't know what it's doing. It doesn't know that it's adding diversity. It's just a hard hack to offset problems in the learning set.
And that's because image recognition is terrible at detecting people of different races.
Right.
And
yeah, my Connect still would, like, my ex-wife was white, and my Connect would always catch her, even if she was just like casually walking in the background over me.
Yeah.
Even if I was like doing like the big fist over my head gesture, that was like the look at me gesture, but it wouldn't. But
this might not be related, but when I say, hey Google, both my phone and my wife's phone pick it up, but when she does, only her phone picks it up. So I think there might be something there too.
Or you speak with a very double voice.
Oh,
you're like the antagonist from a science fiction movie, one that speaks with two voices.
Oh no, I don't like it.
That's how you know you're really evil. You have two voices.
Oh no.
And the funny thing is that, like, I could see different companies start different, like filling in different AI algorithms with different types or like art styles, so that they are now like, generating art, I'm using air quotations there, with the art style that is based on the information that it's fed. So it almost like it transforms or creates new jobs to some extent, in terms of like there's people that are creating art pieces on their own. There are people that potentially creating art pieces to be fed into an AI, and there are artists that write in the queries, generate the art, and then touch it up and sets it out for the thing that needs to be used. It's still like, art in its own right. Any one of those jobs is still creative, but it's new jobs that never hasn't existed yet.
Yeah. It's just the source that's the problem, because you do that
like Osama said,
right? Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah,
I was just going to say that we're going to keep doing it.
Right.
I insist. You go.
Osama, go.
Okay, fine. I was saying we do the same thing with animations and mocap, right? Like the mocap data that we get that gets cleaned up by animators. That's a technology in games specifically that didn't exist like 20 years ago, or up until 20 years ago, and then started becoming more and more commonplace. But the source is an actor that you pay for their movements. Like there's no legal ambiguity here. Like the difference between starting up using an AI and then coloring over it or finishing it up, that's a little more murky, because do you have the permission to use the art that was inspired by others without their permission, to use it as a starting point? And the argument can be yes or no, depending, because right now you could use any images as reference. So it's like, it's murky. It's not a clear yes or no.
But again, like, I think reference is very different from being part of a data set, right?
Yeah, you're right. But there are artists who take an image and like color over it, and depending on how much of the source image is still there in its essence, there's already some debate over how that is.
But we frown on that, but that is again an artist taking a piece of work as reference, and that's very different from an algorithm using something in a data set. Where the only value that's being added is the fact that that piece of work is in the data set.
Yes, but what we're talking about is that art is in turn used as a starting point for something that an actual artist will draw over. So like the comparison is between those two things.
Right, but same thing. Like there's a difference between taking a piece and then drawing over it is already sort of frowned upon.
Exactly.
Right. It's great, but it's frowned upon. But it's still a human doing work, drawing over a thing, versus an algorithm that is basically ingesting million pieces of imagery that it might or might not have rights to.
Yeah, we're saying the same thing.
And then generating something. Yeah, I think we are.
Yeah.
I think we are. All right.
And I think that's what I was also suggesting, as like, if that, let's say, goes in one way over the other in terms of like the rights and ability for people to use that, then I can see a future where firms hire artists specifically to create art to fill into or feed into the algorithm so that they can generate a lot more of that same data type. You know what I mean?
Speaking of seeing the future, this is something that, like, already the art that's being generated now would have been hard to believe like 4 or 5 years ago that AI would come to this point. Do you see a future where games can be made by AI?
Yeah, of course.
Like, you throw in, I want this progression system, I want this style, this camera thing, and then the game is just generated and playable.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Again, it will only be like based on whatever we feed it. So like, I can't see an AI creating things that other than like a mixture or data sets of stuff that we already have in some way.
And the vast majority would probably be not enjoyable, but then 1 or 2 will stand out as being,
Well, that's the thing. If you can get enough of a data set there, then it will just work the exact same way as the art thing, where at some point you'd probably recognize the algorithm, but you would still get games.
Yeah.
And many of them might be enjoyable because you're not going to feed it bad games, right?
I think that we just don't have that same level of standardization or easy ability to categorize game mechanics in the same that you would have with, let's say, music genres or novel types or something like that.
Yeah, it's more than
we
that.
We do have several billion hours of Twitch footage of video games.
That's true. That's true.
And you could take that, run that in, see how people react, get people's best moments, and then generate moments like it. Like everything can be automated as long as it patterns in it, and human creativity is effectively pattern creation.
Yeah, but that's a bigger problem to solve. Like, taking images and creating another image is a bigger problem to solve than taking gameplay footage and creating a playable game with collisions and all these things.
That's the funny thing. You would think that, but to the algorithm, it really doesn't matter what you feed it, right? All it matters is that it has the processing power to do it. And right now, I think the technology is more bound by like computer cycles. Like, one image is one frame of data with a relatively predictable sort of like amount of pixels, right? So relatively easy to sort of like figure out how that works. Twitch is relatively standardized, and creating video that looks like Twitch video could be relatively straightforward. I think you might need some sort of 3D interpreter, but AI can do that too. I think we're more bound by the speed at which computers work and the sort of memory we have available than anything else, because I don't think the algorithms right now would necessarily have issues doing it.
That's interesting, because I mean, you're not wrong. I just I have a hard time wrapping my mind around the algorithm figuring out this, like, the space that's in the video and how the collisions are supposed to work, and actually creating rigid rules for it, because that's what we need. We need specific rigid rules. It's not a video, right?
So that's the weird thing. That's not how it works, right? Like, the image generation also doesn't know what it's doing. It doesn't know that it's creating images.
Yeah. But games need rules. Like, it's not just, you don't output a thing that kind of looks right. You have to output a thing that works. And
I don't know if you can output a thing that looks right, you can recreate it, right?
Wow. Okay, I guess I need to take more time to think about this because my head hurts now. I'm trying to like solve the problem in my head, and I'm like, where do you start? Like, where do you start with games?
Well, the same place you start with anywhere else. Break it down into smaller blocks. And if you can get Twitch footage, we already know that AI can very well interpret 3D images into movement, because that's exactly what self-driving cars are doing. They're taking a 3D space of which they have no real information, and they're turning it into 3D like location data in the car at 120 kilometers an hour, in a way where you get 3D spaces where I can tell you where other cars are, where pedestrians are, what signs are there. So there's really no reason to assume that they can't do it for games, right? And then as the rules, it doesn't care, because the rules don't, like, it only has to fit a pattern, whether those are game rules or movements or characters or whatever. It just doesn't care. It doesn't care that whether it's drawing a panda or a human. It just cares that it knows what that pattern is.
It just feels like, for me to be able to figure it out, it just feels like you'd have to apply that video to a specific game genre, because like once you explore, like, otherwise it's just undoable. You need a different algorithm for each game genre. But again, I'm not smart enough to design that. Like if you wanted to do it with first-person shooters, period, and you could feed any video or any set of videos to and generate a new first-person shooter, I could see that. I could draw the lines. I could create the space. I could have the weapons, the projectiles, all the things is sourced, and you're done. But how do you do an algorithm that's going to interpret it what genre it is, and then generate that, like with all the different types of games that are possible?
Right, but it doesn't need to. That's the thing. It doesn't know art styles either. It just creates art styles. It doesn't know. That's the thing. The thing about AI, about deep learning, is that it doesn't know. All it knows is that there are certain patterns that work and other patterns that don't. So if it starts with a line, right? If it starts with a horizon, it knows it's making a first-person game now because that's the pattern. So that first line that gets drawn, it's like, oh, it's a horizon, so I guess this is this pattern. And it's just going to go and continue building something that looks like a first-person game.
And sometimes it'll get it completely wrong, and other times it'll get it right, and that's the fun of it.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's the data set that it gets trained on. So it'll generate a first-person RTS game where it's first-person, but all the buildings are isometric. And people just go like, this is bad. And then it won't try that pattern again, or it will limit the amount of that pattern that it creates. And then you test it often enough until eventually it's just right.
All right. I want someone to make this. I'm going to be out of a job, but my curiosity is going to be satisfied.
Great. Oh, no.
No.
Speaking of, let's move out of the AI discussion. Because we have some, we probably did some stuff that was not procedurally generated this week, right?
Or at least that we don't think is procedurally generated. Who even knows these days? Yeah, I can go first if you don't mind.
I mean, yeah, you or Fawzi.
Fawzi, you want to go first?
No, you can go first.
I played Cult of the Lamb, and it was really good. I really liked it. Did either of you play Cult of the Lamb?
I did not.
No, I don't know much about it.
So it's a top-down. I hesitate to call it a roguelike because I actually don't know how much of it is crafted and how much of it is procedural. I can't tell because I only played it the one time so far. It feels like there's some randomness in there in the cards and the choice of abilities that you pick up, and maybe there's a little bit in the generation of the rooms, but I honestly don't know. And to be honest, it doesn't really matter because if I can't tell, I can't tell, right? I'm still having a good experience in that. But it's a top-down, like kind of a twin-stick shooter because you get abilities that are like that, where it has a secondary component where it's a city builder, kind of, again. You're a cult builder. You're like recruiting people to follow your cult, and they give you resources, and those resources in turn give you power-ups. And the really cool thing about it, there are actually, I would say, two really cool things about it. The first is that contrast between the super cutesy art style and the ultra demonic theme is so good. It's so good. Like it switches back and forth, so you really feel it. It switches back and forth between, oh, this thing's cute. Oh no, its eyes turned red. It's about to murder me. Okay, it's back to being cute now. And that is really well done. Really well executed.
That's cool.
Yeah. And the second is the commitment to the theme. Like you are creating a cult. You're actually choosing doctrines for the cult. And those have a real strong impact on what kind of cult it is and how your little, cultists, how they behave towards you, towards each other. You really feel it, a huge impact. And everything is super thematic, really, really dripping in the theme. I'm really enjoying it. It's really, really good. The combat is on the very basic side. You can attack, you can dodge, and you have like a long-range projectile. And there's a really cool, like, Gwent-like dice game. Like, as in, it's not really part of the game, but you could go and play it anytime you want. It's a dice game, and it's actually really good on its own. So I'm enjoying it. I think it's really good.
What does the city builder aspect do? So, like, you build the cult, therefore you can get cards, so you can battle other cult leaders?
Kind of like that. So basically, whoever mini boss that you defeat during the fight, during the combat segment, you can recruit them as being cult followers, and there's other denizens that you could pick up along the way. When you come back to your base, you could give them a job, like cut wood, mine ore, or worship, or whatever it is. Each one gives you a different resource, and those resources you use to build like city components, like farms and beds and shrines and the like. But the cult part of it is that you could actually put in place rituals. Like you could actually sacrifice one of your cultists, as an example.
Okay.
And depending on what doctrines you have in place, everyone will fear you now and have the risk of leaving, but you gained another resource that you could use to get another power up. Or everyone's happier now because your doctrine says that they have eternal life. And some of the doctrines can be you could bring someone back to life. So you could actually sacrifice a cultist, bring them back, sacrifice them again, bring them back. And there is some min-maxing where if you have the right combination of doctrines and things in play, you're just maximizing the resources that you're getting, and those resources you could get like different cards, and the cards are basically power-ups or abilities that you can take with you when you go back into combat. But what's really cool is that these two segments don't feel at odds with each other. One really feeds into the other, and the how long you stay in one and the other, it never overstays its welcome. At least that was my experience. You're in one just the right amount of time, and then you move on to the other one, but one feeds the other. It's really well balanced.
That sounds like a lot of fun. Are you playing it on Switch?
I actually got it on my Steam Deck. So I'm playing it on my PC, on my Steam Deck, and I got a third-party dock, so I'm also playing it on my TV.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, just going back and forth between all three.
What's the third-party dock like? That's interesting.
So it's just it looks like a USB hub, like with a USB-C thing that sticks out of it. You plug it into the Switch, and then you have the HDMI cable and the power adapter that go into the TV or into it doesn't actually dock. Like there's no clip on, or it doesn't.
It's just a dongle.
Yeah, just a dongle. That's all.
Okay.
But it works. It works flawlessly.
I will share with you the one I use, and I spoke to Rami about once. It's very light. Did you get one, Rami?
Yeah, I ordered one.
Ah, nice.
All right, you have to tell me about it.
I finally decided to look into replacing my Steam Deck because it's just a little too big.
Yeah.
It's just a little too big. Like I love that thing. It's great. Like don't get me wrong. It's an incredible device. Mm-hmm. But I want to bring it for travel. And that thing is like the size of my backpack in height, and it's just too big. So I've been looking at a bunch of like replacements. You can tell that Steam Deck is the good one because everything else is worse.
Okay,
but some of them are smaller, which means that they might be worse, but they're still going to be better for my use. Because all I really want is a portable Destiny machine,
I didn't realize that there's already a market for like Switch-like devices.
No. Fawzi, these things have existed for years. Like GPD has been making like hundreds of them.
Wow.
The sort of like portable computer like market is relatively, or handheld computer maybe, is relatively mature. Like there's a lot of players on it that just continue to be players in it.
I thought they were pretty much only for emulators. That's the only ones I remember seeing.
Like Raspberry Pis with buttons.
Exactly.
Right. No, those exist too, but there's like full-blown portable gaming computers. And when the Switch came out, a lot of them took the Switch like form factor.
The design, yeah.
Yeah. It's just the Steam Deck, like obviously it being Valve, just got way more attention, and all of these like honestly kind of knockoff-feely devices. Mm-hmm. But a lot of them are very popular.
Police stations.
So yes, I'm looking at one called the Aya Neo Air, which is currently an Indiegogo project. But Aya Neo is relatively well known. I have some concerns about the battery life, but at the same time, I'm always carrying batteries with me.
Okay.
So that's not really a problem. Basically, my goal is simple: to play Destiny on the go. I currently use my laptop, right? And my laptop to play games at the quality that I want from Destiny, on the size of screen that my laptop has, is it needs power. And to have power, it can't use the USB CPD. It can't use USB-C charging because it doesn't give enough power for the graphics card in the computer. So if I want to play Destiny, and only if I want to play Destiny, I need to bring my power brick, which is huge. Then I have to bring an Xbox 360 or Xbox One controller, which is large. So effectively, any device that is smaller than my power brick plus an Xbox One controller is a device that I want.
Mm-hmm.
Sadly, the Steam Deck is larger than my power brick plus an Xbox One controller.
Yeah.
So I'm just looking for something that is smaller than that can play Destiny, and Ionia seems to be it. So I'm going to be ordering it, and I'll let you know whether it's good.
That's good. Did you come across any funky knockoff names like a Stream Decker or something like?
No, not yet. No, like I said, that market is relatively mature, so most of them are just sort of like playing to their own brand.
Okay.
So it's not like there's a lot of like knockoffs in that regard. Like most of them are just exist, and just already existed for a long time. So they're not going to try stuff like that.
I'm very curious about the device you're getting, man. I'm looking for. You're bringing it with you to Gamescom?
I won't have it in time for Gamescom, sadly. So it'll be in a future episode of the Habibis when I get the device.
All right.
Speaking of Destiny, I finally played the new dungeon. Sorry, this is YouTube's favorite segment.
I'll go do the dishes. Carry on.
Rami talks about Destiny. No, so the latest season had a new dungeon, and dungeons are the 3-player endgame content. And I hadn't played this one. I just, I hadn't been level to like the right place, and I hadn't really like caught up with friends in Destiny. I hadn't played Destiny for a while, honestly. The most recent event wasn't too interesting for me. So finally, I got a group together, and I went into the dungeon, and it's a really good dungeon with really clever mechanics. I think that's really what Bungie excels at, is creating like interesting ways of communication and like pressure.
Mm-hmm.
So the main mechanic in this dungeon is that you're in the mind of one of the main antagonists of Destiny 2.
Ah, cool.
And basically, you're aboard. You're already aboard his like massive like mothership, but then there are these bells of conquest, and there are these symbolic things for that race of creatures. And basically, when you shoot the bell in the real world, you get teleported into this deep blood red version of the same space. That is like worse. There's more death drops. There's more like, it's just a worse version of it, and it's basically in his mind.
Okay.
To get out, you need to find the bell again, and then you need to shoot it again. The only difference being that any player who's not near the bell when the bell is shot dies. So going into the red zone, you can be anywhere you want, and you just get teleported to the same spot you're in, but in the red zone.
Mm-hmm.
Leaving the red zone, you all have to huddle together next to the bell, and then shoot it at such a point that you all get teleported back.
That's cool. It seems like a lot of mechanics to kind of force the party to split, and then mechanics to force the party to come back together again.
And that's exactly how they're using it. So, for example, one of the first boss fights, and minor spoilers here, but this is the basic mechanic that you're taught in the first minutes of the raid. For the first boss encounter, effectively what you need to do is there's 4 different rooms, and like sort of the main room. And what you need to do is you need to start by, in the main room, enabling the bell by killing 2 enemies. That makes the bell active. Then you all go into the red space. You kill a certain type of enemies that give you a key.
Mm-hmm.
You'll get 2 keys, which open 2 rooms. Then you go back to the main zone, and you have limited time to go back to the main zone. Otherwise, the nightmare collapses and your team wipes, right? So you have to go quick. When you're in the red zone, you have to go quick. You have to kill those enemies, get those keys. Every player can carry 1 key. There's 3 players, there's 2 keys. So 2 of the players need to be working on the keys, and one of the players needs to keep the bell safe and activate the bell again. And then you all get back to the bell. You shoot the bell, you go back to the real zone, right? Now, in the real zone, you deliver the keys to the appropriate places. That opens the doors. Now, every player that had a key goes into the open doors. They go to the red zone, and then the doors disappear because those doors don't exist in the red zone. So now you're stuck behind a wall. So now there's 3 separate encounters going on, 1 for each player. The main player is trying to keep the bell safe. The other 2 players are trying to kill a lot of enemies. And when they kill all those enemies, the main boss becomes vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
So it's it sounds like a lot, but it's really straightforward. It's really elegant. It forces you to split up, get back together. It creates timing.
It adds time pressure as well, so it adds a bit of that tension. I like it. It's very clever.
You got that sacrifice play where one of the players is not going to be back in time, and you're like, okay, just hit the bell, and they die, but the other two get to keep going, so the encounter doesn't have to reset because if all of you three die, you wipe and you have to restart. So like, incredible plays happen. Like I had one during one of the encounters where everybody with a key was down, and I was running back to the. Everybody with a key was running, and I was running to the bell, but I was only barely gonna make it, and the two others were behind me. And I just slid into the bell and shot it, and the other two died. But like, then I had to stay alive for like, 45 seconds until the others could respawn, and I was under leveled, so I was just jumping like crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I was just jumping around that room, dodging bullets, using supers, like trying to stay alive whatever way I could, long enough for them to get their revive in. And then when they revived, we continued, and it was such a nice, tense moment, and they have such a good feel for that stuff, like the communication, the different ways of like running it, the like self-sacrifice plays, like they're so good.
That sounds great.
There was a really good GDC talk this year about how they account for all of those moments in Destiny. It was a Bungie talk from Alan. Can't remember his last name. Oh crap! Edit this part out. From Alan something.
Alan something. Yeah, Alan something. One of my favorite Bungie. There's quite a few Alans at Bungie.
Yeah. Either way, it was a great talk. I'm gonna find the link and maybe add it to the show notes if I ever.
Was it Alan Blaine?
Yes, that's the one. That's the one. Great talk, and it talks exactly about their philosophy on how to approach it, exactly to balance it that way. So if you're interested in, how they do that, I would definitely.
I really wish the two of you would play Destiny so we can play some of these encounters, but a man can dream.
One day.
No such thing. This is less inshallah than inshallah.
I'll jump in with Destiny 3. Like honestly, I love
no Destiny 3.
I love the playing the Destiny part. I don't dislike it. The problem is the navigating the Destiny part. I always feel like I'm lost. I have no idea what the resources are. I don't understand what I'm supposed to be doing. Once you get me in there, I like the shooty parts. The shooty parts are really good.
But also, you don't give it more than 3 tries, so you'll never learn the resources.
Yeah, that's the problem. Because there's a million other games competing for my attention.
Yeah. I mean, even I backed out of Destiny for a while until I got this group together. Now there's a big showcase coming up in 7 days.
Ooh.
So the hype is real. I can't wait for what they're going to be showing. But yeah, that was my main like media thing this week. So. I think it's Fawzi's turn.
I'll keep it quick because I haven't been playing that much video games because for entertainment outside of Elden Ring, and we spoke so much about that. So I'll keep it out of the discussion.
I just talked about Destiny, so I feel like you've earned.
Well, Destiny is a live game. There's constantly new things. Elden Ring is the same game that came out with like some patches and updates, but I'm still finding new things in it.
Right.
I watched Better Call Saul.
Yeah.
I think the final season is out now, and the last episode came out today, actually.
Yeah, last night for us, yeah.
The finale. You guys Breaking Bad fans?
Yes, huge Breaking Bad fan. And I'm not up to date with Better Call Saul. I'm missing one this season. I didn't watch this season.
Yeah, Rami, I know how you feel about TV shows, so I understand. Right. But Breaking Bad, I like Breaking Bad a lot, and this show is pretty cool. I think sometimes some of its highs is on the same level, if not more than Breaking Bad when it gets going. And this is by far my favorite season because it links the two shows together really, really well. And it's like if you had any questions in Breaking Bad, like I wonder what this person did before this, by now you should know.
That's
so it kind of it gives you like a very full-rounded image of pretty much all the characters in Breaking Bad, and then all the characters they introduced in Better Call Saul. Saul is a much more complex character than initially we thought of in Breaking Bad, though it was a standout and a complex character in Breaking Bad to begin with. The show just fleshes this out super well. And the creators of both shows were involved. A lot of the cast members were involved. Yeah, ultimately, like I think this last season really makes watching the show all the more worth it.
Wow, that's high praise. I can't wait.
Yeah, it's high praise. Really good show. I enjoyed it a lot.
I'm just thinking of what TV shows I've watched recently, but I think after the Marvel ones, I haven't.
She-Hulk is coming soon. Excited about that.
Yeah. I'll watch it.
We'll watch.
She-Hulk is one of my favorite Marvel characters, and so I'm super excited for it.
I mean, I still watch whatever Marvel does at the moment. I'm not sure if it's smart still, but
fun fact. You know how Deadpool breaks the fourth wall? Did you know that She-Hulk did that first? In the comic books, She-Hulk was aware that she was in a comic book and talked to her writer and her artist, and that was a thing that she started before Deadpool.
Wow.
Yeah, her comics are really
did not
fun.
know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like a fun show. I mean,
she's probably not going to do that on the show, and she hasn't done it in recent years in the comics either. But originally, that was one of her things.
Right. All right. Fair. I'm sure they'll do it at least once.
Maybe there's a nod there somewhere.
Maybe.
Yeah, it has to.
We'll watch for it.
I don't know. I've recently been watching Marvel again with my girlfriend who's catching up, and yesterday we watched Avengers.
Ooh.
And it's been a while since I watched the Avengers. Did you know that final battle scene in New York is way longer than it needs to be? Like, they could cut like 10 minutes off of that scene and it will be the exact same scene.
Yeah, there were a lot of moments that they were pausing for like dramatic effect. Right. Nothing was happening. Yeah.
Still a very good movie though. Like you forget how much you love Phil Coulson until you see Phil Coulson.
Yeah. Expired.
Yeah. Oh well. Yeah. No, I mean, Better Call Saul seems interesting. Breaking Bad was kind of. I watched a little bit of it, but it's just it was still ongoing when I watched it. Mm-hmm. I just don't watch series until they're completed, and then often when they're completed, they're so long that I don't feel like watching them.
Yes. So I think now, if you want to watch Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, it's like 5 seasons of Better Call Saul and 4 seasons of Breaking Bad.
I think they went with the 5th after.
Yeah. So 10 seasons of TV, almost an hour each episode.
Yeah.
14, 15 episodes a season.
Right. So just like 2 weeks of my life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, in my opinion, but that's just my opinion.
Yeah. It's
I'll go play some Destiny.
Yeah.
So,
all right.
Yeah.
Better Call Saul. Cool.
Yeah, that's about it. And like next week, I'm just very excited about Gamescom. That's gonna be like my the biggest in person show in a while because I wasn't at GDC. So super hyped about that. Getting to see everybody, including you two.
Yeah, I'm gonna be there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's going to be our first meetup as the Habibis.
Not only that, we're doing it in person. We're doing a thing.
Yeah. We convinced Gamescom to give us a panel. I mean, to be fair, they kind of asked.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure which one is it. Somewhere in the middle, probably.
Yeah.
But Gamescom. What was it? 1 p.m. on
Thursday.
Thursday.
Yeah, 1 p.m. on Thursday. Yeah. Somewhere. I don't know where the room number is.
At the Gamescom Congress. I don't even know if any of our listeners go to the Gamescom Congress, so it might be a very calm talk.
We'll talk to each other. We'll bring a recording just in case.
We'll bring the mics and record. We'll record an episode on stage.
Whether people are there or not, consequential.
Yeah, exactly. If there's like one person in the audience going like "woo," then I don't care. Like I'm gonna have a good recording with you. I'm just very excited to get the entire group together. I've met with Fawzi I've met with Osama so often.
Yeah.
I've never been with the two of you in the same space.
No.
Yes.
No, I've never seen both of you in the same space either.
Kind of wild.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun. I'm looking forward to it.
Me too.
Yep. Are we gonna sit in ascending height?
I don't want to sit in the middle.
No, you're definitely sitting in the middle.
That'd be so good. We'll just look like Fawzi's bodyguard.
We'll stand and you'll be in the front.
Yeah. We'll go slightly to the back with sunglasses and a finger.
I love it.
And I'm sitting on like a stuffed camel or something.
Yeah. We should really get a stuffed camel. I wonder if I can get one. A balloon camel?
A balloon camel would do. Yeah.
Balloon camel might be easier. I was kind of hoping that I could fly myself to Gamescom, but that's not going to work.
No? You couldn't find a plane?
No, well, the problem is that even if I rent a plane, it's just going to be standing in Germany.
Yeah.
And I need to pay for the days that I'm not using the plane too. So either I need to find somebody who will fly with me and then fly back.
Yeah.
And that's not going to work. So instead, my plan is to drive. And Gamescom is 2 hours away, and I might have some passengers for my drive too.
Yeah.
Oh.
That would be fun. If you allow me in your car, I'll come with you.
Oh, you can totally
awesome.
the car.
Road trip. That's gonna be fun.
A free BB's road trip. I feel like sometimes we just need to stop putting words in front of BB. 3 BBs, pre BBs.
It's a lot of fun though.
Talk BBs. I don't know. Yeah, Gamescom. That's next week. It's so fast.
We're already in August. This year's flew by.
Yeah, it's good though. It's a better year.
Oh yeah, for sure.
In that regard.
For sure.
It feels less like the world is locked up and more like you have to be careful.
Mm-hmm.
Although I will say the temperatures are getting out of control.
Oh yeah.
I don't remember this. I am sweating behind my computer here, and
yes.
I'm in a Habibia. And I'm still like I'm swimming.
I'm struggling to sleep some nights because it's too hot.
Yeah.
Wow.
What is up with that?
It's been. I mean, we had a heat wave here, but it wasn't as bad as I'm seeing in Europe. It's ridiculous in Europe. It doesn't make any sense.
Well, we just don't know what to do with heat.
Mm-hmm.
Like this entire place is built for Stockholm weather, not for not for Italy weather.
That's sad.
Yeah, it's wild. It's very warm. I'm gonna swim my way out of this Habibia into something dry. Because the studio lamps and everything don't help. So I think we're gonna wrap it up.
Sounds good to me. That was a lot of fun.
Good.
Put a doily on it.
That was a lot of fun. Put a doily on it, an AI-generated doily.
AI-generated doily. Highly pixelated.
Highly pixelated doily. Yeah, no, that's what we're gonna do. So that was another episode of the Habibis. You can tune in, check in via thehabibis.com or join our Discord at discord.thehabibis.com. You can follow us at Twitter at @the_Habibis. And you can find me and Osama and Fawzi individually there as well, or in the Twitter handles we say in the outro. Thanks so much for tuning in, and until inshallah, a live episode, inshallah. From Gamescom. Inshallah. For now, salam. That was the Habibis podcast for this week. I was Rami Ismail, your host for this episode. You can find me on Twitter at @THA_Rami. My fellow Habibis were Osama Dorias, who you can find on Twitter at Osama Dorias, and Fawzi Mesmar, who you can find on Twitter at Fawzi Mesmar. Send us your questions, stories, and suggestions via info@thehabibis.com. The intro and outro music was provided by Malik Zubaila, and the logo was provided by Ibrahim Hamdi. The Habibis is a weekly podcast about 3 game developers drinking good Arab tea, with new episodes launching every Friday, inshallah. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcasting service or check out thehabibis.com for more information. Thank you for listening, and salam.